we're so glad you're here today. Welcome to Crossroads Going Deeper. My name is Lorelle, and this is...
I'm Lily.
Yeah, awesome. We're so glad to have you guys here today. We're on the One Journey series, and today we talked about one baptism. So it was a pretty cool sermon. I mean, what were your original thoughts of the sermon and the idea of it?
I liked it. I liked how Kevin opened up with, he talked about being, what was it? The 3 points he said in the beginning.
Yeah. So being qualified.
Yeah, and then transferred, and what was the third one?
Redeemed.
Redeemed. I liked how he started with the 3 points and
then went through each of them. Yeah, that was pretty cool. Let's read through the verses really quickly just so everyone else knows what we're talking about. But it's Colossians 1, verses 12 to 15, I believe. It says, giving thanks unto the Father who has made us to be partakers of the inheritance of the saints in light, who has delivered us from the power of darkness and has translated us or transferred us into the kingdom of the Son that he loves, in whom we have redemption through his blood, even the forgiveness of sins. So it's pretty cool that we went through this. And pretty much like today was about one baptism, but we were really just going through like what Christ has done for us to even get us to that point of baptism. So the idea of being qualified, and he talked a lot about how, it's through Jesus that we're qualified. What did you think of that particular point and the idea that it's not your own merit, but it's all because of Christ?
From my perspective, I like how I see it is it's all about us, but at the same time it's not, if that makes any sense. Like, he died for us, but at the same time it's not about us. Like, I don't know how to put it. Like...
Yeah, I get you. So, like, he died for us, but at the same time, it's all about Jesus.
Yeah,
so.
like, it's not... The point is not to make it about us. Like how he said, keep the main thing the main thing. Like, we're not the main thing. It's not anything we did. It's about him. And that's, like, what I have to keep reminding myself. Like... I always, I kind of take myself too seriously, and I don't take God seriously enough sometimes.
Yeah.
I kind of just, get caught up in, every day, but then you just have to realize, why you're here, and, where you were, and what you were brought from. So.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah, and talking about being brought from, I liked the idea of being transferred. I liked when Kevin talked about, he's like, it's like you're over here, and then you just get picked up and you're transferred over to here. It kind of made me think of, a UFO and aliens, and they, shoot down the thing, and they, pick you up, take you somewhere else. But that's just such a cool idea how, we've been taken from darkness and misery and pain and all of the things that, a broken world and sin produce in our lives. And he's just pulled us out of all of it and put us into a glorious kingdom, that's beautiful, where he is and light is and freedom is. It reminds me of the verses where it talks about he's freed us for freedom, and that's such a cool idea. And then he talked too about redemption and also just the word ransom, how Jesus was a ransom for us. What do you think of that idea of being redeemed, how you've been redeemed through Jesus?
It's it's weird to think that I didn't deserve it. And you go about your day and you're you run into people and you're like, oh, they deserve this. But then you catch yourself and you're like, well, you didn't deserve to be saved. And
Yeah, no, I totally get that. There's a story in the Bible that I actually really, really love. It's a story of a man named Mephibosheth. Have you ever heard of that story before?
It sounds familiar. But...
So it's in the Old Testament, and it's, so there's King David. You're familiar with him, of course, right? So before David was ever king and he lived in Saul's house, he was best friends with Jonathan. They were really close, which in and of itself is cool because Jonathan knew that God had anointed David to be king. But rightfully, Jonathan should have been king because he was son of the king. But he knew that that was God's plan, and he was okay with it. He was okay with giving up that kingdom for God's plan. And they actually made a covenant together that said that David, when God delivered him from his enemies and brought him into his kingdom, that David would still show steadfast love to Jonathan and his family forever. And so that's kind of where Mephibosheth comes in. I'm just going to pull up that reference really quickly. But after Saul had died and Jonathan had died in war, and then King David had been king for a while, he remembered his covenant with Jonathan, and he wanted to honor that. And he asked if there was anyone in Saul's house who was still alive. And finally, he found out that there was one person still alive, and it was Mephibosheth, who was Jonathan's son.
Yeah. And didn't he invite him to dinner?
Yeah. And what's really interesting is that Mephibosheth was lame because he was 5 when the war and all happened, and Saul and Jonathan, everyone from that family was killed. So he, when his nurse was rushing out to save him and was carrying him, she tripped and he injured both his legs and he was lame for the rest of his life. So at this point, Mephibosheth's an adult. There's a servant who has been taking care of him and comes to David and says, yeah, I can go get him, all these things. So that's where we're going to pick up is 2 Samuel chapter 9, verses 6 through 8. And it says, and Mephibosheth, the son of Jonathan, son of Saul, came to David and fell on his face and paid homage. And David said, Mephibosheth. And he answered, behold, I am your servant. And David said to him, do not fear, for I will show you kindness for the sake of your father Jonathan, and I will restore to you all the land of Saul your father, and you shall eat at my table always. And he paid homage and said, what is your servant that you should regard for a dead dog such as I? So this is, where they're together, and it's so cool. And I love how David says, it's for your father's sake. It's for Jonathan's sake that I'm extending this kindness. And that's the way it is with us and God. It's not because of our own merit. It's not because we've qualified ourselves, but it's because of Jesus. He has qualified us. It's for his sake that we're brought into the family of God and we're given salvation, which is just super duper cool. And then he says, I'm going to restore to you all that your father Saul had, all the property, the land. And he gives instruction in the next verses that Ziba, who is the servant who's been taking care of Mephibosheth, that he and his servants and his children are to take care of Mephibosheth and all this land and property that's being restored to them. And that every night Mephibosheth is to come eat at the king's table. And it's so representative of what God has done with us and for us. And what do you think of that story, having heard that story now?
No, I have heard that story before, and it's just a reminder that, how do you pronounce his name again?
Mephibosheth.
Okay. He, if I was in his shoes, I would probably look at myself, I look at myself every day, and it's like, you recognize how unqualified you are in whatever area. And that story, it's like God saying, I still love you. You still belong here. You still belong to me. I still love you no matter what you think, what your potential, what you think you are. You still deserve this seat, next to me. And that's just a beautiful thing.
Yeah, really. And it's not because of yourself. It's for someone else's sake that you deserve this seat, that you're worthy of it. And then I like the idea. It goes so well with the sermon because the next thing was being transferred. He's now been transferred into the king's place, and also the idea of being rescued. He was in this day and time, it was not uncommon for a king who comes in to destroy any of the family left from a previous king, so that their throne could not be usurped. Mephibosheth was essentially in hiding, and he was rescued out of that hiding and given so much. And I'm just going to read the last couple of verses, and it says, so verses 11 to 13 say, then Ziba, that's the servant, said to the king, according to all that my lord the king commands his servant, so will your servant do. So Mephibosheth ate at David's table like one of the king's sons. And Mephibosheth had a young son whose name was Micah, and all who lived in Ziba's house became Mephibosheth's servants. So Mephibosheth lived in Jerusalem, for he ate always at the king's table. Now he was lame in both his feet. So interesting how it still plugs that little part at the end, all of these wonderful things, but he was still lame in both his feet, which is that's where we are right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like God has brought us to his table. He's made us his sons and his daughters. We're part of his kingdom right now. But, you know, we still have our struggles and our problems, but we still have a seat at the table. Have you ever heard the song Come to the Table?
I have not.
It's a really good song. You should look it up. I want to read the first lyrics because it goes so well with this story and with what we talked about today. It says, "We all start on the outside looking in. This is where grace begins. We were hungry, we were thirsty, with nothing left to give. Oh, the shape that we were in. Just when all hope seemed lost, love opened the door for us. He said, come to the table. Come join the sinners who have been redeemed. Take your place beside the Savior. Sit down and be set free. Come to the table. Come meet this motley crew of misfits, these liars and these thieves. There's no one unwelcome here. That sin and shame that you brought with you, you can leave it at the door and let mercy draw you near. So come to the table, come join the sinners who have been redeemed. Take your place beside the Savior. Sit down and be set free. Come to the table." I just love that song so much.
I love that. I love what it says, like, come to the table.
Yeah, and I love that, you know, come meet this motley crew of misfits. Like, you know, none of us deserve to be there. We're from different walks of life and, you know, different sins, but, like, we're all welcome to come sit beside the Savior. And I love that this morning was just a reminder of that. Pretty cool. Well, this has been a fun conversation. Yeah. All right,
well, go check out the social medias. Thank you for joining us. You can check out the social medias for more Go Deeper content. And thanks again.
All right, bye.